Hey, what's up guys? This is the Bama Dog coming to you today to give you a review on the INNOVV K5 camera. It goes on your motorcycle, front and rear view. As always, you can like, subscribe, all that garbage. So let's get on with it. So this is the product here, the INNOVV K5. It's got a few modules. Here's the box. Pretty sleek little thing, has a little magnetic side. Everything should be loaded inside. Mine's already installed. But here are the modules that kind of come with it. You got your main camera, DVR, front camera. You got your rear camera. You got your little button here and indicator. You got your GPS antenna. And then you got your module here that kind of connects to the battery. And here's all the connectors are connected with little screw-ons. Here's the bike. I've got a 2015 Harley-Davidson CVO. I've got the seat taken off right now so I can kind of show you how I've got some of the wires routed. This was an insane project because this bike doesn't really offer a good spot to put the front camera. Rear camera is not really a big deal, but you can't stick it under here because there's nothing to mount it to. You can't really do it on the sides here because the camera would just literally bounce up and down on this little shock here, or just be too low to the ground. The other option I had was sticking it up here, possibly mounting something here, having it shoot up over the fairing here, and that did not look like that would work because it would probably wobble a bit. I mean, I was looking everywhere, and the only other place I could figure out to get it was attached to the light bar. So if you have a light bar, that's good. If you don't, then I'm not real sure where it would go, other than possibly maybe on one of these interstate sidebars, but that would cause it to extend outward on the side of the bike. So that may not be a good idea, especially with rocks and all kinds of stuff. But where I ended up doing it, attaching it, was to my right fog light. And this took a whole lot of trial and error, had some plastic pieces, and basically what I want to do is I end up swapping this out. So on this side, you see it's got like a little Allen wrench bolt that goes in there. So I went to Home Depot, got a lot longer bolt, and stuck right here to compensate for about 7 or 8 little washers that are actually underneath there. It's really, really hard to see, but you might be able to see them in this right here. It's extremely tough to get in there. But the other issue was that the SD card is on this side, so the camera had to be mounted on this side. Otherwise, you can't get in there to take out your card, all the wires. In addition, you have your antenna right here, your little, I guess, Wi-Fi antenna. It was only about so long, so it's going to be, it's not going to be hidden very well. The rest of the wires, you've only got just a few inches, and I end up getting it to go up inside the fairing here. And I put a lot of electrical tape there so the way they don't, when the ride vibrates, it doesn't eat through the wiring. Because there are just a ton of wires coming out the back. And it's a shame that there are so many, but perhaps they could have maybe one thicker wire. It goes into maybe a module behind the fairing, and then from there maybe it has their other 5 or 6 wires, because this was kind of a mess to have to try to deal with. Anyway, I had this bracket created right here. This is a custom bracket I took to a machinist. He kind of bent it up really good, and then I kind of powder coated black, and then added another brace on the front. Originally, this bracket here was about out to here, but when I mounted the camera there and you turn your handlebars all the way to the right, you'll end up trying to clip the back of this. It's just such a tight area. So you can see right here, I've turned it all the way, and you can see right here it has about a ½ inch of play, and that's it. So with it extended out, the camera was here before, so it was easily hitting this. So I had to protrude the camera forward, and what I did, I went to Home Depot and got one of these things right here, just a little T-plate, and all I did was take a Dremel and I cut it about right here, and I used this piece, this one single piece, and then I had to kind of Dremel off this edge over here as well. That way the camera had to still come this way a little bit, so I had to kind of rotate it. If you can see down in there, it's actually Dremeled off on that little side there. Then underneath I just used the basic mounting hardware that came with the camera. And with that being said, it's a tight fit, but it works perfectly. It doesn't really catch any of the motorcycle. You can see looking down, the only thing it catches would be this front fender on the bottom left of your video, but it's not enough that's you're gonna worry about it. But this thing is solid. It's not moving anywhere. So it goes up in here. All the wires get connected about right in here, as you all know about the camera. And then everything else just kind of goes where they need to go. All those wires. I put my GPS module up here, and you can't really see it from this side. I did cut out a tiny notch for that wire to go in there, so it wouldn't be it wouldn't get pinched. So I did cut out a little notch there. I got these little hookups from Amazon. It fit my 1-inch handlebars, and I mounted the control module here, the little button. Got me some hardware, hooked that up. It screws right into the back, and that wire goes down, and it's actually attached to this brake line. And you can see here the brake line on the opposite side of the control module. It goes down here all the way into the fairing. So that kind of took care of itself. Took me some double-sided Velcro to kind of hold that wire down to where it needs to go. The microphone, it's actually in a little cubby right here. So I keep the microphone in there. It just kind of wraps around this little centerpiece, which so the microphone just kind of stays in there. If you don't want to use a mic, you can just not attach it. Next will be the rear camera and the battery. For the CVO, I don't know how I would have done it if it weren't for the CVO, because the CVO has this little thing on the top here, and the wiring actually comes under the fairing down there and kind of comes under this thing, this little lip. So this little piece comes off, the wires run down this side right here underneath, and they come out right here, these two black wires. So hiding these wires and keeping them away from the heat was the key. I did not want to run them underneath. I figured something might happen to those. So anyway, they come down here. The thick one is your rear camera. So it basically comes around here. All my slack was in here. And then it follows under this little metal lip here, slides here, goes under the attachment points here, and then all the way down to the rear. And on my attachment here, the bracket was actually on the outside of the license plate. I was unable to put it behind it because of the just the shape of the Harley plate holder. It was at an angle, so I didn't want to have to really deal with that. Plus, at this angle, this keeps this line here a little straighter because it makes it come out towards the rear a little more. Right here, what you want to do is make sure the INNOVV logo is up top. That will ensure that your video is right side up, which I figured out pretty quick. Anyway, screw these down real good. And then the only attachment I used on the bike, I didn't really want to put any sticky type stuff on the bike, was this thing that came with the INNOVV pack. And it's one of these little cable locks, or whatever you want to call it. So I put that there because you don't want that thing flopping around. Everything else was pretty tight. I used some double-sided Velcro to hold these in place. The other wire is the black battery wire that goes down here. It's kind of wrapped around and goes to this module, and here we see the little LED right there. And you can see that it does flash blue then red, blue then red. That is normal according to the manufacturer. I did email INNOVV about that, because when the bike is off, I would hope that this whole module would be off, or have at least the ability to turn it off in the app, but you do not. It is always on. And that part did concern me just a little bit, because it's always draining your battery. Little as that LED may be, it's still somewhat of a drain. So, but I have not had any real issues with it, so I guess that's okay. Anyway, the black wire goes into that module, and then out of the module is your black and red one connecting to negative, and the red one kind of wraps around here and connects to the battery underneath all this mess. So that's how it's all connected. It's basically the DVR on the front, about 6 wires or so coming out of it, and you just have to maneuver your wires to the areas in which everything is connected. Rear camera was pretty easy. The hardest part really was getting the DVR wire situated, because right under here I did have to Dremel off just a piece of the fairing just to make sure the fairing wasn't pressed up against the wire. So I made just a little divot underneath here, which you can't really see, but wherever your wires go, wrap them up in electrical tape really good, so the vibrations of the motorcycle don't actually make it hit the fairing and rub your wires raw and end up causing a short. And because if they cause a short, you'd have to replace this whole module. This is, I think the other one goes into it, so you'd have to replace this entire module, which is the most expensive part, because that is the brains, is this thing here, the DVR. For a Harley Street Glide, at least the CVO version, having this module here and having a light bar, that allowed this installation to look really, really good after it was all said and done. But again, this little bracket here was extremely difficult to engineer for me to try to figure out the dimensions and everything, because I actually messed up at first and I'm having to Dremel that off. And like I said, I had to add that other piece going forward. So one other thing you can do is, if you do have some bolts or whatever that you want to be blacked out, just simply use one of these. Just get you a Sharpie, black Sharpie, and you just Sharpie off the bolts and any nuts that might be on the end of it, and it makes for a pretty good clean look there if you want everything blacked out. Now, one of the great things about this camera is the sleekness of it, but the parts on this thing, here's the module as far as the control button, where you can press that while driving and it will save a photo front and rear. And I believe it also protects the video that it's in, so it'll kind of put it in a different directory file on your SD card. It's got your camera right here showing that it's actually working. Your GPS means it's connected, and then their Wi-Fi. Actually, that's your Wi-Fi there if it's connected to your phone. So when you're right, you can see right here. Kind of hard to tell, but it feels real solid. Mounted to this little handlebar mount here, which I'll put the link in the description below. It's really, really solid, so looks good. It's real solid. Water's not going to get in here, and like I said, these all kind of light up with different colors once it's powered up. I'm about to show you a picture here. When you press that button, it takes a picture of the front, which you'll see here, and it shows all the data at the bottom there. Well, whatever you name your camera, it gives you your lat long, your speed, and I think it also shows the date there. It also takes a picture of the bottom or the back camera, so whenever you hit the button, it takes a simultaneous picture of both ends. Obviously, you can see the back isn't quite as clear. The front is a better camera, but it definitely takes really good photos on the rear. And video is pretty similar. It's got the same information there at the bottom, placed just a little bit different. The only thing you might have seen in here is this garage door opener. Just as a little bonus treat here. It's hard. I soldered on those onto one of the buttons of a garage door opener. Just had a little Ethernet pair going through here. Mounted it underneath there with little screws, and now I've got a garage door opener right under here. This little red button. It's kind of hard to see, but I just reach under my bike, press that, and my garage door will open without having to reach for an actual garage door key or something inside here. So you got a little hole under here that you can put a little switch, a little push button switch. There's not much more to it. You just crank it up, and since it's powered up, as soon as you crank the bike, the power to the system comes on and it just automatically starts recording. So that's a great feature. No on-off switch, it's just automatic. Crank it up and go, and everything's automatic. Now I am going to show some video of a trip downtown Birmingham and another trip just kind of locally, going through some areas rural, and I'll show you the front camera and the rear camera kind of separately instead of showing a picture-in-picture, which kind of takes away from the clarity but that way you can at least have an idea of what it looks like. One last note on the audio, on the riding, the microphone was in this little cubby during the entire ride, so if that microphone was actually out of there but perhaps attached to this or any other place outside of inside there, it might actually be a little louder, but the microphone does pick up pretty well. You look from behind, you can see it looks really good, really stealth. There's your camera. So good location here. And then last, looking at it from the front, you can see it, but it's part of it. It looks really good, and so far I've had no issues with it. Thanks for looking at the video, and if you got any questions, drop them in the comments and I will get back to you as soon as I can. This is the Bama Dog, and I hope you enjoyed this review. Roll Tide.